How the hell are y'all doing? Gotten lots of emails and requests to put together a quick video on performance upgrades, motor builds, how different upgrades impact performance, and just kind of go through the process from a kind of a high level. I'm not going to dig down into specific upgrades. I'm not going to go through product suggestions. I know a lot of y'all emailed me and commented about specific builds. We'll look at doing that at another time. What I really want to just kind of go through is how to build a bike that you're going to enjoy riding. If you're trying to build a bike just for numbers and it's going to spend most of its life on a trailer or on a dyno, go ahead and watch cooking videos, because this isn't it. This is for the guy that wants to build a bike that he can get on and run and be happy every time he twists the throttle. If when you twist back you don't come up with a shit-eating grin, then you didn't build it right. I know there's 473 million internet experts on every forum out there that's going to tell you to build your bike this way or build your bike that way. That's how they built their bike. That doesn't mean that that's the right bike or the right build for you. My goal when I sit down with customers and we do a consult is to educate them and dispel a lot of the myths and bad information that they've gotten from all these internet experts, and figure out what their goals are, and then figure out how to get there. The biggest complaint that a lot of guys that build for customers have is they build the bike exactly like the customer says, and the customer's pissed because it's not what they wanted. So we go pretty above and beyond to make sure that we over-explain what type of results the different modifications and upgrades are going to have, and set a realistic expectation. If you're looking for 165 horses and 155 foot-pounds of torque, you're not going to pull that out of your 103, not without spending an ungodly amount of money. But people watch Biker Build Off and West Coast Choppers and all this, and they see somebody build a monster bike in 45 minutes, and then they come here and don't understand why their bike's been here for 3 months and we're still working on it. That's not how reality works. I know they did it on TV. That's not how it actually works in real life. You can build a bike and I can get more power and more performance that you're going to feel on the seat than out of starting with a 103, then go into like a Milwaukee 8 and building a stage 4 Milwaukee 8. I'm also going to talk about sport bikes and their power curve, and just try to help y'all understand what you're able to do within your budget, and ultimately not get talked into something that you're not going to be happy with $10,000 later. Along with all the comments and questions about builds and tools and stuff, I also want to thank everyone for their immense concern for my health and well-being. Yeah, I smoke cigarettes and drink beer. So for all the rest of you guys that are helping me bring Fat Guy Sexy back, I appreciate it. Keep on. Okay, so you can do a stage 4 build on a 103, go up to 107. You can do a stage 4 build on a Milwaukee 8. The two bikes are going to perform completely differently. Your Milwaukee 8 build is going to have a torque and torque and horsepower curve that's going to be pretty vertical. It's going to come on slowly, ramp up, and then it's going to plateau towards the end of your RPM range, and it's going to end up peaking a lot higher. You're going to end up with higher numbers. Whereas like a 107 or my 117, those numbers jump immediately up, and that torque and horsepower curve come up, and they hold steady and gradually increase and then finally drop off at the end of the RPM range. Depending on how you're going to ride that bike and what you're looking for, those two builds will either make you infinitely happy or piss you off to no end. So everybody wants to brag about torque and horsepower numbers, and don't get me wrong, they're important, but in my experience, they're more important to builders. You know, we get off to squeezing every last foot-pound and every last horse we can out of a motor. 2 or 3 gains on either line is not going to result in much of a difference in the ride, but there's an art and a science to it that your builders get off to. I don't know how else to say it. But as you build a motor, as you build a bike, you end up spending significant amount of money. And in the beginning, you might spend $3,000 on your Milwaukee 8, and man, those numbers just jump dramatically, and you feel it, and you're loving it, and you're absolutely. But then as you continue, you end up spending more and more money for a much lower gain in performance, to the point where when you finally get towards the top end of what a motor is just physically capable of producing, you're spending $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 for 10, 15 horses. So that curve, if you will, goes up super, super fast, dollar per performance. It shoots up. The first $3-4 on a motor, man, that you get 15, 20, 30% gains. It's tremendous. And then it slowly plateaus, and it slowly ends up petering out or tapering off. And you end up chasing those gains and spending a lot of money. And unless you're building for a number, you're not going to feel that as well. Now, if you're running times and you're at the track and you're running the strip, and or you're king of the dyno, then sure, man, dump as much as you got into it. But if you're trying to build a bike that you can ride and have fun with, at some point you end up with a depreciating return on your investment. And that's something I try very hard to explain to customers, so they don't end up going, well, why didn't I get the same 30% gain out of the second $3,000 that I got out of the first $3,000? Well, because the engineering and the science and the physics of an internal combustion engine don't work that way. All right, so I'm going to take and show y'all the difference between a 103 with some upgrades, a Milwaukee 8 with some upgrades, and then just for shits and giggles, a sport bike. And if you've ridden all three, you'll know they ride completely different. The motors are night and day. So if you've been riding a 103 for 6-7 years and you jump on a Milwaukee 8 and expect it to ride like your 103, you're gonna be mad. Similarly, if you jump on a Busa and twist back on that bitch and think it's gonna perform like your 88 Twin Cam, you're gonna end up a grease streak down the road. So, and I'll show you how that actually looks in numbers. Some people refer to the real estate under the curve as the number under the curve. I just normally when I take a dyno sheet and I explain this to a customer during a consult, I shade in the area, the real estate underneath that curve in highlighter, and so I call it that feel good shady shit. Either way, that real estate, that area that's underneath those two lines, is what directly translates to how much you enjoy riding your bike. Yes, suspension, brakes, your seat, all that comes into play. But if you're riding a dog, but you're riding a dog with the Barca Lounger on it, you're still riding the dog. And the first time you twist off on 140 foot-pounds of torque and you feel what that feels like, you're going to retire the Barker Lounger. And no, I'm not bashing geezer glides. I'm not bashing, touring bikes at all. I'm just saying, know what you want, and then we will help you figure out how to get there. Let's look at these papers. This is a 103. You'll notice here's your torque value and here's your horsepower value. So just below 2,000 RPMs, the torque shoots almost straight vertical and it peaks, or just about peaks, and it continues to climb a little bit, and then about 3,000 RPMs the torque starts to drop, and then as you continue through your RPM range it declines and drops off. Torque is forward momentum. It's what propels you out of the hole. It's what causes the bike to pull. So if this is your bike, you're gonna get into it, you're gonna hammer it, it's gonna pull hard, and you're gonna feel the forward pull slowly start to decline, and between 3,500 and 4,000 would be where I would be shifting to go up to the next gear, which then gives you your torque curve again, so you're pulling hard in your next gear, and so on and so forth. This number, the torque value, it's not the only number that's important, but as far as what you feel, experience, and enjoy, this is the number you should be looking at. Having said that, if this number drops off too quickly, too low in the RPM range, you're going to wind out, which means when you get to sixth gear on a 6-speed, you're going to end up bottoming out and at 140, 130, something like that. Now my question to all my customers is always the same. How often are you at 5,000 and 6,000 RPM in your shift band? How often do you ride way up here? Is this more important than all the time you spend between 2,000 and 4,000 RPM? This is where 90% of us ride. And this is what I try to build motors for. Now, here's a Milwaukee 8. At 2,000 RPMs, torque comes up and pulls, and it stays pretty level all the way to 5,000 RPM, and then it starts to drop off. So this bike pulls longer than the 103. That means your torque band, your power band, and what you enjoy as you ride, you have more time there. And that results in a later shift point. I wouldn't be shifting this bike until about 4,500 to 5,000. And that gives you a whole lot more of that shit-eating grin range that you'll like. All this area under here is what I refer to as the real estate, or the area under the curve. This, to me and to most of my customers, is the most important. The more area you can build underneath this torque line will result in a much more enjoyable, much stronger, or much more powerful bike and a more enjoyable riding experience. Now, sport bikes. Well, yeah, man, sport bikes, I'm putting out, 150, 160 horses on my 600. Yes, you are. Look at the torque line on this 600. It comes in and it shoots way up, but it's way back here between 9,000 and 12,000 RPM. This area is where the enjoyment in riding is. So you're going to have to wind this thing way, way out there to get the pull and the surge. That is what most riders enjoy. This is why, in my opinion, Harley Davidson is such a much more enjoyable bike to ride. Because the power comes on low, it holds steady and strong all the way out beyond where the majority of riders are shifting. So that kind of gives you an idea of what all these numbers and lines actually mean to you when you're screaming down the freeway at a $110 with your hair on fire and bugs in your teeth. And ultimately, no matter what kind of numbers I put on a piece of paper, if when you're riding that bike, you're not having fun, if when you're riding that bike 2 up, and you know, maybe baby girl ain't exactly tiny, maybe baby girl got an ass like a Volkswagen, I'm not judging. Big girls need love too. Maybe you need to build your bike if the majority of your riding is 2 up. Maybe you need to pick your upgrades so that your torque curve peaks much lower in your RPM range and the bike's pulling harder to offset the inertia, and that's what your ass and her ass equals, is inertia, so that you can get out of the hole and you can have fun. If you're a $110 and ugly and no girls want to ride with you, then maybe you want to pull that torque curve a little less dramatic up at the low end and instead sacrifice some of that low end torque for high end torque and horsepower. I don't know. At Barnett Cycles, our goal is to educate our customers. That's why we do these videos. It's to educate the general public. Because if you know what a realistic expectation is, then I have a much better chance of delivering it. Because nobody wants a pissed off customer. So I hope that helps clarify some issues. I hope that helps clear up some confusion. Before you jump up and start stroking checks to buy all those nifty upgrades that XYZ forum guy says that you just gotta have, give us a call. Man, this is what we do 24/7. We eat, sleep, and shit bikes. I mean, this is what we enjoy. Happy to talk with you about what you're trying to do. Happy to go through different upgrade combinations to figure out how to give you what you're after. It's not just cams, it's not just exhaust, it's not just heads, it's not just intake. All of those work together. And if you get one of those out of whack, you're not going to be happy. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. I guess there's supposed to be a bell on there somewhere, or something or other. Click on that if you see it. I don't know where it's at. Like the video, leave some comments, you know, and hopefully I've answered all the comments that have been left on the toolbox tour. If you haven't seen that one, it's on our channel. I go through all the tools that I, as a Harley Davidson technician, use, and how I have my box laid out. Again, trying to save some of the techs that are coming up money. You don't need to go out and buy everything off the Snap-on truck, but you do need to have certain stuff, and I try to help clarify that. Give us a call, 832-797-5906. Again, I'm Irish, and look forward to seeing you all, talking to you all again soon. Thanks.